Hey, I got a question for you. Always. How do you connect to God? And here's part two of that question. Do you think that you connect to God the same way that your spouse does, or does that look different? Yeah. I'm Heather from Love How Deep.
Hey, and I'm Brian. Thanks so much for tuning in. And before we jump in, make sure that you like, follow, subscribe this wherever you are seeing it, wherever you are listening to it. Will help you get all the great content immediately. Will obviously help us out as well. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward again to this topic, connecting to God. It's very
Right.
important. It's something that we all do, and we all typically kind of do it in a different way.
Yeah, in our own ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like our personalities. Like we have a lot of similarities within our personalities, but we
Mm-hmm.
still have some differences. And, they say opposites attract. And so you're opposite because you're so different. And I want you to think about like also like your love language. It's
Mm-hmm.
different, but you learn each other's love languages because you love each other and you want to connect in that way. You want to connect to God, but the way you connect most to God is different a lot of times from your spouse. And so I think understanding this helps you understand your spouse a little bit more, helps you
True.
understand yourself a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think it can also give you a new understanding of like, if, of how am I trying to say this? Like, if I connect to God through worship in the most incredible ways, but you don't, I could look at you and say, dude, what's wrong with you? Why does that song not mean anything to you?
Mm-hmm.
That's judging. You don't want to do that. You want to say, well, how do you connect? If this
Mm-hmm.
is it for me, but it's not for you, it doesn't mean you're not connecting to God. It's just a different way. So this really, I think, can give you new and fresh eyes for your spouse
I think so
and
too.
how you relate and connect
Right.
with God.
Yeah.
Have I said that enough?
I
Connect
think
with God,
so.
connect with God. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And
Let's
it,
dive
it,
in.
it comes back to how you were raised and what you were, I guess, shown, with God and with church. And a lot of times those are going to be the things that maybe end up being important to you as an adult too. And so
It's true.
just to know, like you've been saying all along, it's like being understanding of each other's way in which we connect to God. Kind of like I love how you connected that to the love languages because it's so
Yeah.
true, And you could also say, and we have five senses, how do we maybe sense God the most? Do we sense Him by seeing Him, hearing Him, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and what we're really going to do today is we're going to be talking about 9 common ways that people connect to God, and it's based upon a book by his name is Gary Thomas. It was called Sacred Pathways,
Mm-hmm.
and we really just want to share again these 9 common ways, and we'll talk a little bit about I think some of the ways that you and I connect to God, and maybe some of the
Right.
ways that we don't. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same for you. But yeah.
Right. And I think like I suggest that as you watch this or listen to this podcast, uh, do that with your spouse and maybe take notes of what these 9 are and then kind of talk about like what are your top ways of connecting with God and what are your spouse's top ways and what does that look like for you and mean for you and how are
Mm-hmm.
you similar and how are you different? Just really it's there's not a right or a wrong here. It's just understanding your spouse on a deeper level
Mm-hmm.
in a different way.
That's right.
Hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
And with that one, or with that, you want to go with the first one?
Yeah. All right. This is the traditionalist, someone who loves God and connects through rituals and sacraments or symbols throughout the year. And so maybe it's that communion that you take at church. Like our church does it once a month, and that is a physical thing that you're doing. And it is a visual and physical reminder of what the Lord did for you, what Jesus did on the cross for you. And maybe that right there is like the most powerful thing that as you're doing that, you're taking part in that, you're like, wow, I just feel like God is right here with me right now. So it can be rituals and things like that that are the most impactful for you. That's not the only one. There could be many others.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and when I think about the traditionalist, I think a lot about the Jewish community, and I think the Catholic community are
yeah,
really big believers in doing the things to kind of show their love for God and
right.
remembrance of Him, Yeah.
Right, right.
So I love that one.
Hmm.
I'd say another one that we can talk about is called the Visionary, and that one loves God by dreaming a great dream to accomplish great things. And uh, I would say probably you and I with Love How Deep. I mean, this is really something that you and I have created
Hmm.
as a dream. It's something that we want to do for the rest of our lives because we
Right,
want to help married couples and we want to help couples connect, to God
right.
as they're doing that. So I would say in some ways we're living this one out.
Right.
Uh,
I would
yeah.
take it a step further and say that you are the visionary, you are the dreamer.
Well.
Because so bashful, um, but you really are. It's because you do get these dreams of things that you would like to do within Love How Deep or with other things, and it's um, and I'm more of like the checklist of like, okay, so how are we going to get it done? We're going to do this and this and this and
Hmm.
I check a lot of boxes and stuff like that. So but these dreams come from God,
Hmm.
right? And so
Yeah.
you feel very connected to Him because you're like, wow, just feel like the Lord showed me this or told me that,
Yeah.
and it's for the benefit of others. So maybe
Well, thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Yeah, and I just to kind of repay the compliment. When I think about when we work with couples, a lot of times, as we're preparing and things, you will hear from the Lord and you will say, I think we really need to focus on this with this couple. Like maybe it's communication, or with this couple, it's forgiveness, or maybe with this couple, it's connection. And here's some activities I think we should do with them.
Hmm.
So I think, when it comes to doing that, I just appreciate you for just
Thank
your
you.
vision and your dreams when it comes to working with these couples. So,
Thank you.
yeah. What
All
do we got
right.
next?
Another one is the socialite. And
Hmm.
mean that in like, I don't know, it just sounds like the socialite, really. I mean it in like the best way. I don't know how else to put it. It's just what was on this list.
Yeah.
But this is the person that loves to be around other people and confiding in them or holding someone accountable, or maybe they're holding you accountable. But I think for this, I think of leading a ladies' Bible study. I started doing that a few years ago. Um, and with that, like, I love pouring into the lives of other women and praying for them and just lifting them up. I love watching them grow. I love when they're down and out and just in the pits of just coming alongside them. I think that's the socialite. And
Mm.
when I see this and I experience this with these women that are in my small group, it's like I feel so close to God because I'm seeing what He's doing in their lives and in our lives together, and that's a huge thing. So maybe you're a socialite. Maybe you're the one that really wants to, do things like that and just feel that connection to God.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm really impressed with. So when you meet with the women, I go upstairs and go into the room, and I don't
takes the cat
hear,
with them.
yeah, and I don't hear specifically what people are saying, but just
No,
knowing that you're down there and you're interacting with these women, and sometimes later on you'll tell me not specifically about things that were
no,
shared, but just that, hey, we had a really meaningful time where just there was a lot of things that everyone's kind of struggling with, and we all shared and we all rallied around each other and
yeah,
encouraged each other
that's
and
what it's
picked each
about.
other up. So,
Iron sharpens
yeah,
iron.
that's right. So
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. The next one is called the intellectual, and this is the person that seeks God with his or her mind by considering a new theological concept. And not to get stereotypical, but I often think that sometimes men seem to be drawn more to this one maybe than women. Not all the time, but for example, in my men's, we have a Bible study that we're doing, and we're going through Revelation right now. And so specifically, we're talking about the seven churches, the seven letters that John um, wrote to the churches, and
Hmm.
and each church had an issue, whether it be either they were lukewarm or they were dead, or some of them were really passionate in following Christ. And so it's
Right.
kind of been interesting learning about all the different churches and
Hmm.
kind of what's been going on with them. And it's just I've been picking up so many new and exciting things. And yes, part of it is the sharing with other men, but I think again this one, the intellectual, it's really about learning about what's in the Bible and what is God talking about. So that's another
Right.
way to connect with God.
Yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
good. The more you know, the more you can implement in your
Hmm.
daily walk.
Yeah.
each day.
Yeah.
Another one I want to mention is the caregiver. And this is the person that is just so filled with compassion. When you see a need, you want to fulfill that need to the best of your ability, I think. And just loving others in the midst of whatever it is that they're going through. If they need something, if they need a shoulder, if they need a meal brought to them, like whatever it is, you're the caregiver. And when you do things like that, you just feel this passion and this draw towards God. You feel that connection because you, in that moment, you are being the hands and feet of Jesus. And that's what he calls us to do.
That's right. Yeah. And this is one with I guess the pastor was preaching a lot today about doing things for others and not just showing your faith by just saying it, but actually in your actions. He did talk about, obviously we don't go to heaven and we're not saved by our actions, but faith without works is dead is basically what it says in James. And so I was really feeling convicted about wanting to be less selfish and more selfless, in helping others. So this is one that, even though maybe this isn't a specific way that's real high on my list of connecting to God, it's definitely something I want to be doing more of, when it comes to that. So what do we got? We got another one here. The contemplative seeks to love God in a quiet pursuit of journaling and reflection. And it doesn't talk about this with this one, but I think about praying. I think about being in that prayer closet. I don't do it as often as I want, but I love when I get into I go literally into the closet and it's really quiet in there and all the clothes kind of dampen the sound. And I mean, speaking of the quiet closet, I think one of our cats earlier today ran up there because it was raining. He goes in there because it's quiet and it's peaceful and he's not hearing a lot of the outside noise and what's going on. So for me, it's probably contemplative is more about quiet prayer and just trying to be still. But just like this one, I mentioned this earlier, it could be journaling. It could just be sitting at your desk and you're just kind of looking up, reflecting upon God and just trying to slow down. So so that's another way to connect to God. Yeah.
Right.
What else you got? You got another one?
Yes. The activist is another way to connect with God. It's the activist is at war with injustice and loves God by fighting it. So when you see that there are homeless people, maybe you get involved by some community works there, or maybe a food pantry or clothes closet, or child pregnancies. I'm trying to say pregnancies, and that sort of thing. But you see an injustice and you want to go help that cause, that worthy cause, And when you do that, you just feel like you're doing something for God through for the community, and you feel drawn to God through that.
Yeah, and this is the one, I think that one, you and I probably resonate least with that one. It's still important. It's very important. All these are important.
Yes.
But again, our personality may not be such as I typically, when I think of activist, I think about somebody that's maybe a little bit more extroverted and a little bit more kind of out there with pushing something, change.
Pushing an agenda or something like that.
Showing up at,
and it's not necessarily talking about that, but it's just you're looking to right some wrongs.
Right.
Whatever it is.
And it could, you could certainly be introverted and do that just as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in your writings. I think about how Paul talked about how he, verbally his communication style, he said, was a little bit lackluster, but really writing was really, resonated for him. So it could be that too. So what do we got next? We got the Naturalist. This person feels closest to God in the out of doors and in the midst of creation. And I'll say this is the one that probably resonates really highly for both of us.
Both of us, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll never forget in a Bible study that I did with some men. Gosh, it's probably been 15 years ago. It was when we lived in Florida and we met out it's called Payne's Prairie, and just a beautiful nature preserve. And we talked for quite a while. And then at some point, the leader said, all right, I want each of you to break up, go into separate places in the preserve and just kind of be quiet and pray. And And I'll never forget the leaves and the wind started rustling up
Wow.
above, and it felt like the presence of God was there. And when we came back together, he asked us for our insights on what we were experiencing, and I told him
I
that.
love
And
that.
15 years later, I still remember that. I mean, it was still
Right.
just pretty impactful, pretty
Right.
powerful. And I know for you too, I think
Oh,
being out in nature
I love
is
it.
very, I mean,
It's important
important.
to me. Like, I
Yeah.
love to go for walks, and even if it's in our neighborhood, I love to be in the mountains so that I can see His creation and
Mm,
say, "Wow, that's our God made those majestic mountains." And the changing colors of the leaves in the autumn, or the spring little blossoms, that are growing. When I see the little insects, like the little ladybug, it's like He made this majestic mountain, but He made this little tiny ladybug. That it's just, to me, like, I just look at all of that and I'm like, how can you not see God
yeah.
in all of this? So
Right.
I totally, yeah, I'm a naturalist big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
It's good.
And
All
then
right.
the last one, this is also totally me as the worshiper,
Mm,
inspired by the joyful celebration and music, through singing and music. You just, like, you hear the words, you sing the words, and you internalize it, and you just apply it to
mhm.
yourself, to your own life, and just through that you feel this connection to God, and that's absolutely me,
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
And
And
so yeah.
and that's something this morning that was very powerful at our church service that
Hmm.
we went to, and just I just really enjoy. I think you and I standing close together, and occasionally
Worshiping
our
side by
hands go
side.
up, or our voices get louder,
Yeah.
or we start to clap. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's just I just
Yeah.
absolutely love it. So this one's very important to me as well.
Right.
I think this one's kind of grown on me over time. Maybe when I was a child, not as important to me,
When I
whereas it
first
was for
met you,
you.
you were much more reserved, and
Yeah.
you've definitely grown into this,
Hmm.
and see the benefit of,
Yeah.
the worshiper.
Yeah.
And I think, I just want to also remind you that out of all nine of these are just ways that you connect to God. There's not a right, there's not a wrong, but I think it's so cool just to know another facet of your own personality and your spouse's personality,
Hmm.
and having that cool conversation together of, like, what is it about being an intellectual that makes you feel closer to God? Because you might both read a spiritual book, and one of you is just like, wow, God spoke to me about this. This is incredible. And the other one's like, okay, I didn't get that same thing from it, but that's because you're not an intellectualist, and that's okay. But you just understand so much more about each other. And that's like, I think that's what this is about,
Hmm.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. It is. It's all about learning and understanding each
Yeah.
other, no doubt.
Yeah.
So awesome. I think we got another one in the
Okay.
books.
I think so.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And with that, want to make sure that you pick up our 10 practical steps to communication. It's a great guide. The two of you can use this together to make sure you strengthen your communication and connect on an even higher level than you are now. So, anything else, Heather, before we sign off?
Just, I hope you took some notes, and if not, watch it again. But have a conversation with your spouse about this, and just discover a little bit more about each other.
Yep.
Yeah. So I
All
encourage you to
right.
do that.
Thanks so much. Take care until next time.